Perfume Genius, Glory, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about the latest from Mr. Mike Hadrius, ladies and gentlemen. One of my favorite singer-songwriters over the last decade or so. He's been at it since the early 2010s when he dropped his Learning debut, which maybe is not my favorite work from Mike over the years. It's a little bit too lo-fi in parts, but man, is it ever just a gut punch just because of how tragic and revealing it was right off the bat. I did see a lot of great things coming down the pipe, and over the next decade, he put out some of my favorite records in chamber pop and art pop, like the Put Your Back Into It project, which is just one of my go-to cry records, one of the most tragic and emotional and just revealing and direct chamber pop records of the last decade or so. And since then, Mike has only pushed himself farther and farther. His Too Bright record showed him bringing in a lot more synths, a lot cleaner production, but keeping his very raw lyrics intact. And also with his No Shape record, he blew his sound to the moon and back, bringing in much more colorful production and just taking a lot more risks. Tracks like Wreath and tracks like Slip Away were just the beginning. As this album pushed further, he tried more and more things while keeping the swagger intact. All with his trademark, very raw and very intimate lyrics still pushing the way forward. Now, in 2020, he released the Set My Heart on Fire Immediately record, which, I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest, I had my reservations on leading up to it. I thought this thing looked a little long for my liking, but it ended up being one of his most direct and revealing projects to date, which is crazy to even think about. Throwing some impeccable production and taking more risks than ever, it's one of Mike's most enjoyable records from start to finish. Now, the last time we heard from him was with the Ugly Season record, by far his most experimental release. And tracks like Harem were awesome, the title track as well. But, I mean, sadly, there were also a lot of cuts on this record that, I mean, no pun intended, I just found pretty ugly to say the least, underwritten at times as well. But leading up to this project, I thought the singles that he's been dropping lately have been very full of life and glamorous and nice and shiny. Let's chat about this thing. This album kicks off with It's a Mirror, and honestly, I've been playing the hell out of this since it dropped as a single. I love the strummed riff that we get here, super hypnotic. Also has a little bit of Mike's trademark swagger. I love his very hushed, very passionate performance, and that strummed riff is straight up hypnotizing. Also brings in just enough intensity to this track. There's some drama here, there's a little bite to it, but there's also nods to a glam rock as well, which I feel like are really tasteful. It's a great introduction to the very glitzy, very full sounds of this record. Really loved No Front Teeth featuring Aldous Harding as well. My thoughts on this one really haven't changed much since it dropped as a single. It's a graceful, very lush track that shows Mike and Aldous really playing off each other really well. It's so light and sweet, but it's incredibly detailed and very personal as well. But I also just really love and get hyped up every time that guitar comes crashing in for the chorus. Like, it gives this track just a little bit of oomph, but also plays to this album's strengths. Also really do enjoy Clean Heart as well. This one was a very late dropped single, dropped about a couple of days before the album came out. I love the sort of low-key groove that we get on this track, and Mike's performance is one of his coolest on this entire record. It remains just as bruised and raw, but also has a little bit of swagger to it once again, and I love the Twilight instrumental here and just how playful this track comes off. It's Perfume Genius by the books, but with just a different kind of gleam to it at the end of the day. I also do really love Left for Tomorrow. This one is just plain nice. I love how this track just sounds alive right off the bat. This instrumental just doesn't sound like it wants to sit still at all. Beneath that hushed surface, it just sounds so full of life. Mike also sounds full of life here as he brings to the table some of his most introspective lyrics. And instrumentally, I just feel like overall, this is adventurous for Mike. A lot of this record is. But in true Perfume Genius fashion, it's still very him. Really love Full On as well. This one is one of the most glamorous cuts here. It's also the longest track here, but that works to its advantage because it grows wonderfully. The harp that we get here is beautiful, especially alongside of Mike's very bombastic vocals on this track. This brings me back to the days days of no shape in a big way. It's dainty and it's sweet, but it's also absolutely jam-packed with emotion. It may be the most Mike Hadrius sounding track here, and just a great deep cut all around. Now, I will say this, the album overall, while it's certainly not bad, doesn't give me that same gut punch feeling that a couple of Mike's last records has. Not only that, but I feel like he does drop the ball a little bit, like with Me and Angel, for example. This one just kind of annoys me more than anything, mostly because I feel like Mike has literally wrote this track 50 times. Like, go back in his discography to the Too Bright era, and you'll hear a dozen tracks that sound exactly like this. And let me tell you, a lot of those tracks are a lot more interesting than this. Not only that, but like as far as a sound goes, this track just doesn't really sound like it has as much of a place on this record. It's just kind of middle of the road for Mike. And Capizio, I think, is the worst track here. You know, I'm not really sure what happened on this track, but the glitchy instrumental and Mike's very hushed performance on this track just never seem to really get on the same page. And sure, there's some elements to this cut, like the lyrics, that are still very revealing. I mean, this is still a Perfume genius track at the end of the day. But there's so much of this cut that just seems like it was phoned in. I just feel like Mike can do so much more interesting stuff than this. And Glory as a finale, my God, why is this track so incredibly safe? Like, this has been a record for the most part of Mike pushing sounds that he's already kind of touched upon in the past. But then I hear this, and we've been here so many times. I mean, I learned nothing new from this. I can't really take much from it, and it just sounds like even Mike knows that we've been here before. So yeah, this is probably not my favorite thing that Mike's done recently, but it's still just a really impressive and just overall very solid chamber pop and art rock record. Like Dion, for example. Dion is awesome. I love the patient pianos here and the synths floating through the background, and Mike's performance here is absolutely breathtaking. Like hearing this compared to the title track and Angel and I earlier, this is night and day to me. It's got the smoky drama to it as well that I really appreciate. Yeah, it brings me back to a much simpler time in Mike's discography, but in a good way. Really love In a Row as well. This is one of the more intense cuts here. Once again, there's a lot of drama here as well as some urgency to it. Like on tracks like this, I just feel like Mike is just so desperate to get these lyrics out. And this incredible instrumental is just swirling around him. Awesome cut. And I really do love Hanging Out as well. Instrumental here just has so much mystery to it. The little details of this cut are just incredible. This to me is a really interesting sound from Mike, mostly because you really don't know what you're going to hear next. Like, are you going to hear some scuzzy guitars? Are you going to hear some absolutely breathtaking pianos? Or are you going to hear some woodwinds? All of that, or you possibly could just hear another gut punch of a one-liner from Mike, or maybe all four at once. Honestly, it's immaculate. It's exciting. I wish we got more tracks like this. Overall, this is another very solid record from Mike Hadrius. It's probably not one of my favorite things he's done in a while, but I mean, the man is still trying new things, trying new sounds, pushing his sound further, and bringing in the raw lyrics that he's always brought to the table. And yeah, there's a lot of tracks on here that I just feel like, or maybe he's phoning it in a little bit, or we've been here a few too many times before. But overall, the man's a legend, and this is just another very solid record from him. I'm feeling a decent 7 on this album for now, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.